Part 1. The night Luke Carter found her, the sky looked like it was splitting apart. Rain lashed the windshield so hard it felt like gravel, and the old pickup groaned with every mile, as worn down as the man driving it. Luke's hands were tight on the steering wheel, knuckles pale, his mind replaying numbers he couldn't escape, late payments, feed costs, the last warning from the bank. The ranch had been in his family for 3 generations, and he was about to be the one who lost it. That thought sat heavier than the storm. He almost missed her. A flicker of movement near the roadside made him tap the brakes. At first, he thought it was a deer. Then lightning flashed, and he saw a girl standing under a broken road sign, rain plastering her hair to her face. She looked impossibly small against the night. Luke drove past her by a few feet before guilt slammed into him harder than the rain. He cursed under his breath and reversed. When he rolled down the window, cold air and rain rushed in. "You all right?" he asked, already knowing the answer wasn't simple. She hesitated, eyes darting back toward the darkness behind her, where a lonely farmhouse light flickered miles away. "Are you going far?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. Luke studied her in the glow of the headlights. Bare feet, red and muddy. A thin jacket that wasn't meant for weather like this. Dark marks on her wrist, half hidden but impossible to ignore. She couldn't have been more than 18. Yet there was a guarded look in her eyes that spoke of years spent bracing for impact. "Far enough," Luke said finally. He unlocked the door. "Get in before you freeze." She climbed into the truck like she expected him to change his mind. She sat stiffly, back straight, hands folded in her lap. Luke pulled his old coat from behind the seat and handed it to her. She hesitated again, then wrapped herself in it, inhaling as if the smell of dust and leather was something precious. "I'm Luke," he said as they drove. "Emily," she replied. After a long pause, she added, "Thank you, for stopping." They drove in silence for several minutes, rain pounding the roof. Luke didn't push. He knew that look, the look of someone who'd learned that words could be used against them. Finally, she spoke on her own. "I'm 18, she said quickly, like she needed him to know that right away. "I didn't steal anything. I didn't run away with anyone. I just left." Luke nodded, eyes fixed on the road. "You don't owe me an explanation." Her shoulders relaxed just a little. "I came from that house back there," she continued, quieter now. "I was supposed to stay. They said I had nowhere else to go." She swallowed. "But tonight, I couldn't stay another minute." Luke glanced at her wrist again, the way her fingers curled inward like she was still holding something back. His jaw tightened. He didn't ask who they were. He didn't need to. He'd grown up around people who believed kindness was weakness and control was love. The rain eased as they turned onto a dirt road leading to his ranch. Fences leaned tiredly, posts rotting, land that had once been proud now hanging on by a thread. Luke felt a familiar wave of shame. This wasn't much of a place to offer anyone, let alone a frightened young woman. When he parked in front of the small, weather-beaten house, Emily looked around, uncertain. "I can sleep in the truck," she offered quickly. "I don't want to be trouble." Luke shook his head. "You'll sleep in the spare room. It's not fancy, but it's dry and warm." Inside, the house smelled faintly of coffee and old wood. Luke turned on the lights, wincing at the peeling paint and worn floors. Emily stepped in carefully, like she was entering sacred ground. When Luke handed her a towel and pointed her toward the bathroom, her eyes filled, not with tears, but with something closer to disbelief. "Just for tonight," Luke said gently. "Tomorrow, we'll figure things out." As the bathroom door closed, Luke leaned against the wall, exhaling a breath he felt like he'd been holding for years. He didn't know who Emily really was, or what trouble might follow her to his door. He only knew one thing with absolute certainty. If he hadn't stopped that truck tonight, he would have lost more than his ranch. Part 2. Morning came quietly to the ranch, the storm washed away, leaving the air clean and sharp. Luke woke before his alarm, the habit of a lifetime pulling him from sleep even when exhaustion clung to his bones. For a moment, he lay still, listening. There was a sound he hadn't heard in years, movement in the kitchen. Not the creak of the house settling or the wind through cracked boards, but soft footsteps and the clink of a pan. He sat up, suddenly alert, a flash of worry crossing his mind. Then he remembered Emily. When he stepped into the kitchen, she startled, turning too fast, a spatula clutched like a weapon. The tension in her shoulders eased when she saw it was him. "I hope it's okay," she said quickly. "I woke up early and didn't want to just sit." Luke glanced at the stove. Eggs, a bit too browned, and coffee already brewed. It was more than he'd made for himself in months. "It's fine," he said, surprised at how rough his voice sounded. "You didn't have to." She nodded, though it was clear she didn't fully believe him. They ate mostly in silence, but it wasn't the uncomfortable kind. Emily seemed to relax with each bite, like food was proof the night before hadn't been a dream. After breakfast, Luke told her she could rest, maybe take a walk, do whatever she liked. Emily stood there for a second, then asked, "Is there anything I can help with?" The question wasn't casual, it carried urgency, the need to be useful, to earn her place. Luke hesitated. He recognized it now, not just fear, but conditioning. "You don't owe me work," he said gently. "I know," she replied, eyes lowered. "I just feel better when I'm doing something." So he handed her a pair of gloves. They spent the morning repairing a broken section of fence near the south pasture. Luke showed her how to stretch the wire, how to hammer without smashing her fingers. She learned fast, too fast. Every correction made her flinch until she realized he wasn't angry. With each small success, a hint of pride crept into her smile. As they worked, Emily talked in fragments. About growing up where silence was safer than speaking. About rules that changed without warning. About being told, over and over, that she was lucky anyone bothered to keep her. Luke listened without interrupting, his chest tightening with each quiet confession. He didn't offer platitudes, he just listened. That seemed to matter more than anything. Around midday, a truck slowed on the road beyond the pasture. Emily froze, hammer slipping from her hand. Her breath went shallow, eyes fixed on the dust cloud trailing behind the vehicle. Luke noticed immediately. He stepped slightly in front of her, casual but firm. The truck didn't stop, just passed by, but the fear lingered in her posture long after it was gone. "They won't come here," Luke said, though he wasn't entirely sure. "And if they do, they'll talk to me." That was when she finally asked, "What if they make me go back?" The question hung heavy between them. Luke thought of his empty savings account, the bank breathing down his neck, the risk he'd already taken just by letting her stay. Then he looked at Emily, at the way she stood like someone ready to run, even in daylight. "Then we'll fight it," he said. Together. That afternoon, the truck did come back. Two adults stepped out, a man with a forced smile and a woman whose eyes never stopped scanning. They asked polite questions that sounded rehearsed. Had Luke seen a girl matching Emily's description? There were concerns, they said. Misunderstandings. Emily stood behind Luke, close enough that he could feel her trembling. "She's 18, Luke said calmly. "And she's here by choice." The man's smile tightened. Family matters should stay in the family. Luke didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Not when someone's being hurt. Silence stretched. The woman muttered something about lawyers. The man warned Luke he was inviting trouble. Luke watched them drive away, heart pounding, knowing trouble was already at his door, and choosing not to step aside. That night, Emily broke. She sat at the kitchen table long after dinner, hands shaking, tears sliding down her face without sound. "I thought they'd drag me back," she whispered. "I thought I didn't deserve help." Luke pulled out a chair and sat across from her. "You do," he said simply. He made a phone call later, to an old friend who'd gone into law, a favor he hated to ask and couldn't afford to pay for. When he hung up, the ranch was quieter than usual, the future heavier, but also clearer. Because somewhere between fixing fences and standing his ground, Luke realized something had changed. The ranch wasn't just land anymore. It was shelter. Part 3. Change didn't arrive all at once. It came in small, almost invisible steps, the kind you only notice when you stop and look back. Weeks passed, then months, and the ranch began to feel different, not newer or richer, but warmer. Emily settled into a rhythm that no longer looked like survival. She still worked hard, but now she laughed when a board snapped or a horse splashed mud on her jeans. The fear in her eyes softened, replaced by curiosity about a future she'd never been allowed to imagine. The legal process moved slowly, but it moved. Luke drove Emily to appointments in town, sat in waiting rooms that smelled like old paper and coffee, and listened while adults finally spoke to her like her voice mattered. When the case was closed, officially and permanently, Emily cried, not from fear this time, but from relief so deep it left her shaking. Luke handed her a handkerchief and pretended his own eyes weren't burning. With safety came confidence. Emily enrolled in the local school, nervous at first, convinced everyone could see her past written on her face. Luke reminded her every morning that she belonged anywhere she chose to stand. She surprised herself, aced exams, made friends, spoke up in class. At night, she'd tell Luke about things she wanted to do someday. College, veterinary work, maybe even owning land of her own. Luke listened, smiling, though part of him wondered how long he'd be able to keep the ranch afloat. Then, without planning to, Emily changed the tune. She started filming small moments on her phone. Nothing dramatic. Sunrise over the pasture, a stubborn calf learning to stand, Luke's old dog dozing on the porch. She posted them online with simple captions about healing, about quiet places that gave second chances. The videos didn't go viral overnight. They grew slowly, shared by people who recognized honesty when they saw it. Messages came first, then letters, then donations, small amounts at first, then enough to matter. People said the ranch felt like hope. Luke didn't quite understand it, but when the bank called to discuss new options, he nearly dropped the phone. The land recovered alongside them. Fences stood straighter. The house got a fresh coat of paint. For the first time since his wife's death, Luke planted trees instead of just pulling weeds, thinking about years instead of months. Emily turned 19 in early spring. The day was simple: cake from the local bakery, a few friends from school, the sky white and blue. After everyone left, she handed Luke a small envelope, her hands steady but her eyes bright. "Read it later," she said. Luke waited until night, sitting alone at the kitchen table. Inside was a letter, written carefully, every word deliberate. She thanked him for stopping that night, for believing her without proof, for standing in front of her when she couldn't stand on her own. She called him the father she never had, the one who showed her that protection didn't have to hurt. Luke folded the letter slowly, chest tight. He went outside, stars scattered overhead, and let himself cry for the first time in years. Emily found him there and hugged him without asking. In that moment, Luke understood something he'd missed before. He hadn't just rescued an 18-year-old girl from a cruel household. He'd been rescued too, from loneliness, from bitterness, from a life narrowed by loss and fear. The ranch became more than a place on a map. It became proof that broken things could still grow. And on quiet evenings, when the wind moved through the pasture and Emily talked about her future, Luke felt certain of one thing. Stopping that truck on a stormy night hadn't saved one life. It had saved two.